We just soon be outside, but I appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. Obviously, we've got a lot of challenges that's facing this country. And just visited with Zane and Dustin back here, two young men, and Rich, who just graduated, got his master's and wants to be able to teach. The future of this country is what we're truly fighting for. And I truly believe with all that I am that the choices that we make over the next few years will determine the fate of this country. No question that the map will continue to say the United States of America, but how your vote is cast in Washington will help impact what type of a nation this country is truly going to be. Some of the challenges that we face right now, I think you all know too well. We're facing $15.5 trillion in debt in this nation. The impact that that is having on businesses to be able to borrow, on families to be able to grow, on the prosperity of this nation, we simply cannot overstate. Because we all understand debt. And we look at it in our families. We can't continue to spend more than we take in. Because sooner or later, you do have to be able to pay the bill. A lot of our debt is currently being purchased by nations that may or may not have our best interests at heart. I'm one who truly believes that we need to be able to chart our future as a country. To be able to have the same values in Washington, D.C. that each one of us has in our own family. I'd be willing to bet that a few of you, before you came over here, you were probably around your kitchen table this evening, maybe looked at that checkbook, and you were trying to make determinations on how to be able to actually spend the resources that you have. We need that same responsibility right now in Washington, D.C. You know, as I've traveled throughout the 3rd Congressional District, I've sat down and visited with small businesses when we were on, and she was able to come in for just a little bit. Whenever you run for political office, your family pays, believe it or not, a pretty big price for you just being public and the time that you have to be able to spend away from home. And I do want to recognize my wife, Jean. So, it's kind of an interesting thing that, because many of you know that right now they made a big deal in the news media that Congress is on recess. And I don't know about you, but I went to grade school, I know what recess is about. We're not out with mint juleps and umbrellas in our drink. We've been out traveling to the 3rd Congressional District. Over the course of just the last 3 weeks, this will be our 8th town hall meeting. We've held a couple of town hall meetings over the phone. We've visited numerous businesses throughout the 3rd Congressional District and put well over 2,000 miles on traveling in this district to be able to reach out. As I'm talking to our businesses right now, small business is suffering. As I walk through Main Street Cortez, Mangus, Duck Creek, even going through Aitner, where you used to have a couple of facilities, and now we're down to a post office that's out there. We're seeing small businesses continuing to suffer. It's capital access issues that they're dealing with, regulations that are onerous to the ability to be able to create jobs and be able to get our people back to work in this country. Everything that we need to be focusing on right now truly ought to be about jobs and the economy, getting America back to work. We can do this, but we have to be focused. We have to show that same responsibility that we do with our own resources in Washington. We need to make sure that we aren't paying for $800,000 parties out in Las Vegas for the GSA to be able to celebrate and mock literally the American taxpayer who is footing the bill. The only wealth in this country is created not by government, but by the people sitting in this room. This is where the wealth of America comes from. Hardworking families that hope, just like Zane and Dustin, to be able to grow up and to be able to live that American dream. That is truly the challenge that we are facing. You know, every piece of legislation that I put in has been focused on creating jobs and getting our people back to work.
One of the ways that we can do that is to address something that I think we as Americans need to come to the forefront on and to be able to address. And that's being able to create American energy security. To be able to make sure that we're able to chart our own future. And I think that it does need to be an all of the above sort of a process. I just passed through the House of Representatives with bipartisan support the Small Hydroelectric and Jobs Act of 2012. What this bill will allow us to be able to do is to be able to put in small hydroelectric units. Our local water districts can choose to put in small hydroelectric units into conduits and pipelines that have been built by the Bureau of Reclamation. Now, when you're back in Washington, you have to explain what conduits really are, and we call them ditches out here. In these small ditches, just in the state of Colorado, if we take full advantage of this legislation, we are going to be able to generate as much electricity as the Glen Canyon Dam. We can create jobs, being able to put people back to work. We can responsibly develop the natural resources that we have right here in the 3rd Congressional District. We all love where we live. Our clean air, our clean water, and we need to make sure the rules and regulations are in place to make sure that that's assured. But we've got to be able to get our people back to work. We've got to make sure that we are not being held hostage to the whims of others when it comes to being able to drive this economy and to be able to get our people back to work. You know, as we look at what's going on in the Middle East right now, Libya has come apart with the fall of Muammar Gaddafi. You step over into Egypt, it is now being run by the Islamic Brotherhood. We've had the first attacks going back and forth across the Strip, the Gaza Strip. We're seeing missiles starting to fly. Syria is coming apart. Problems in Jordan. Iran is on the cusp of developing a nuclear weapon. They put their Navy to sea and they are threatening to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and you have something called the Suez Canal, where a lot of the world's energy flows through. Is it an appropriate time? Is it an appropriate time for the United States of America to be able to chart our own energy course? I think it is. And in the process, we can create American jobs on American soil with American resources and be able to put Americans back to work. I think that's important. These are issues that we'll continue to fight on and work on. And one thing I would like to address, because there's a lot of conversation going on right now, is about the budget that we put forward. It's a template, a vision for where we can go as a country. We all know full well, because Harry Reid told us so, that the Senate is not going to deal with the budget. Well, this Congress that I stand in, 112th Congress, we've met our constitutional obligation last year and again this year by passing a budget, the one sole constitutional obligation that we truly have. Why is this important? Well, maybe if the Senate had passed a budget and the President had signed a budget, maybe we wouldn't have had that $800,000 spent by the GSA out in Las Vegas being frivolously spent, because we would have had some real accountability that's going to be going on. We need to be able to pass this budget. In fact, the United States Senate has not passed a budget. And let me give you this time reference. The last time the United States Senate passed a budget I had, hadn't even been invented yet. I think the American people deserve better. We need to be showing some fiscal responsibility in Washington, D.C. The same rules that apply to American people need to be applied to Congress, just like they apply to everybody else. And those are some of the issues that we're working on. And I want to keep this as short as I possibly can to be able to answer as many questions as I can. So again, thank you all for taking the time to be able to be here, and I welcome your questions. Thanks.
Just call out the last three numbers. So just raise your hand, that's your ticket. If your question has already been asked, or you change your mind, you don't want to ask something, just say I pass, and we'll go to the next one. So we'll get to those quick as we can. 891. 891?
Oh, that's me.
Okay.
Now see, if this had been PowerPoint, whatever it was, you'd been really excited.
I didn't know, I thought maybe there was going to be a drawing. Okay, my question is, I'm money/schedule I understand that the House controls the purse strings. However, when I inquired during your last town hall meeting about who approved the money that was sent to Brazil for their oil development, the answer that was left on my machine from your office was that the president has discretionary funds that he can distribute as he pleases, and that's where that money came from, was his fund.
Yeah. No, actually, that was a guarantee. I'll clear that up in our office. That was a guarantee that was made through the Import-Export Bank with $2 billion for Brazil to be able to drill off of their shores. And the president is meeting with the Brazilian government right now. And believe me, I'm fully in favor of making sure that we develop good relations with amiable neighbors when it comes to energy. That's why I support building the Keystone Pipeline. I think that that's important. But I also believe that if we are going to be making a guarantee for the development of resources, I'd much rather see that $2 billion guaranteeing American businesses to be able to put Americans back to work on American soil and develop American energy resources, because we will do it more responsibly, more efficiently, and to be able to address the gas prices that we're seeing and suffering under right now.
Okay, so then the House did approve that money then?
No, this was guaranteed through the Import-Export Bank. And without a budget, and this goes back to the importance of passing a budget, if the Senate does not pass a budget and the President does not pass a budget, was there a lot of frustration going on when we had continuing resolutions last year?
Yes.
That is the result of not passing a budget. And so it just flows forward. There are very little controls that we are able to exercise simply without that budgetary process. That's why we need a budget in the United States of America.
So could you explain that, of that export-import thing that the money came from? Where do they get their money?
The Import-Export Bank, it's through guarantees that we provide through the federal government in order for different loans to be able to be made. So.
And the president did, he was the one.
It is ultimately going to be the guarantees, if they are exercised. It's just a guarantee. It's like you co-sign with your children for a car loan. As long as they make all the payments, the guarantee is just the guarantee. You have no expenditures that are going out. Should it default, then you're going to help be on the hook for some of that money. So there have been no expenditures, but it's putting the guarantee, the collateral of the United States of America on the line to be able to develop resources that are not